What's up, everyone? It is a beautiful sunny day here in March in New England, which is very rare. I have this nicely prepped wall behind me, and I can't wait to paint something on it. I am joined today with my friend, Mike Blaze. And Mike, what are you finally gonna do today?
Finish a piece.
You're finally gonna finish a piece?
Finish a piece.
Let's hope so. Let's get into it now. So in some of my videos, you guys may have seen me use a doodle grid. I've even used projectors for some of my hired murals that I've done for companies. But today, I just felt like going at it, just looking at the paper and transferring what I saw onto the wall. I guess just to remind myself I can still do that. I think as artists, it's important to challenge yourself sometimes. And to be honest, this kind of just brought me back to the earlier days of painting. The less fancy days where things weren't as easy. I kind of miss those days sometimes. The early days of painting, it used to be fun to just show up at a wall without even having a sketch. And I would have loved to do that with this new name. But for this first piece, I really wanted to make sure I got a certain message across. So I brought the sketch with me to try to convey that message. So let's take a second and talk a little bit about this sketch. If you haven't been following along and you are just hearing about the name change now from Woke to Voak, be sure to check out this video. Now, I don't want to go into too many details on the name change, but I did leave a vote in my stories up on Instagram, and everyone was very in favor of Voak. So I wanted to kind of find a creative way to drop half a letter, basically figure out how to cut the W. Now, growing up, I was a fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I thought, why not take one of the villains and make it cut the W in half so it forms a V? So I sketched out one of the foot soldiers and I was ready to put it up on the wall. All right, everything is mapped out. I'm happy with the outline so far, and now I'm going to show you guys my color scheme. Okay, I tried to break this down as simply as I could. I know it looks kind of all over the place, but this is going to be my fill. So I'm going to blend from this color at the bottom into this light color at the top. This is going to be my outline color. These are the highlights of my outline color. These are the shadows of my outline color. So I will put these in the darkest like corners and crevices, and these will be on the corners that are the lightest where the light is hitting. These colors are shadow colors to these colors. So wherever these are, if there's a crossbar or something that casts a shadow, I will cast that shadow with these darker tones. And these are going to be a cast shadow from the piece on the wall. That's the plan. Let's make it happen. So as I stated earlier, I am creating a fade from dark at the bottom to light at the top of the piece. To create this blend, I am just using the stock cap that comes on the Montana black cans, and I'm pretty much just dusting over the colors. During this time of day, there's a lot of glare on this side of the wall, and as the sun moved around the building, I started to notice that the colors I was putting on were not quite as opaque as I thought they were. So that's one of the things you want to pay attention to if you're painting light colors over a darker background. It's really not a big deal though, because paint is very forgiving and you could just go right over it and make sure that that area is super saturated. Once the graffiti section is completely colored in, you can then move on to some outlining. For my outline, I always love to use the level 1 cap from Montana. This cap always helps me get such clean, precise lines, but when I want a bit of a thinner line for some detail work on my characters, I also like to use the tiny pink stencil cap, and we're going to talk about that a little later. Outlining is often slow and pretty tedious, but I gotta say it's probably one of my favorite parts of painting, just because you really get to add that definition and see the piece come to life. It's a little windy, but I got all the outline done. So at this point, I can start going into the 3D and adding a little more contrast with the darks and then putting some highlights as well. So what I'm doing at this point is I'm adding some darker tones to wherever the darkest crevices would be and try to create some shadows so this piece gets a little more depth to it. I'm also adding some highlights where the light would hit on the corners and edges of the letters. This part can be kind of tricky, and a simple rule of thumb is to figure out where your light source is coming from. In this case, it is the upper left. So the left edges would always be a little lighter, making the right edges a little darker. This step is very tedious, but once it's done, it's worth it. The effect makes the piece look a lot more 3D, which I enjoy, but I really can't wait to get back to some simple 2D pieces every now and then. I just wanted to make sure that I had a really nice piece to bring out the new name and just kind of go all out. And now that that's done, it's time to work on the drop shadow from the piece. At first I went in with maroon and it was a little too dark, so I tried chocolate and it was a little softer, and I think it worked out a lot better. Earlier, I mentioned the tiny pink stencil cap, and here I am using it. You could see this is a great time to just add those little highlights in. The piece is done, so now I can get into the character. But let's check in on Mike and see how he's doing. Mr. Blaze, how you doing, buddy?
I like graffiti.
Yes, indeedy. Awesome. How you feeling about it? That good, huh?
We'll see.
Are we going to see a finished piece today?
I hope so. Miracles to happen.
Step by step, right? I'm happy to say Mike actually finished his piece, and he absolutely crushed it. Now let's get into that character. I always have a lot of fun doing my characters, and I could not wait to get to this step, but it was important for me to get my graffiti portion out of the way first. This is because I knew that once the character was done, I might end up rushing my graffiti, and I did not want to do that. Typically, characters are a focal point for the viewer. So because of that, I knew I would never rush the character, and it's not like I wanted to rush the graffiti, but I was also scared I would have spent too much time on the character in the beginning and then not had enough time to finish the graffiti later. I only had one day to do this. I just happened to have a day off and was trying to complete this in one session. If you happen to be an artist, I think it's important to take notes of things like this that you happen to do while working. For instance, rushing a background because you can't wait to get to the foreground, or slapping a quick background in afterwards behind a character just to make it look somewhat complete, but it still kind of has that rushed feeling. Once you're aware of these habits, you can fix them and work a little more efficiently. I also think it's important to pick a subject matter that you're interested in. If you don't really care for what you're painting, you're probably not going to care about the final product. When I picked this character and while I was painting this character, I just had so many good vibes and great memories coming back because I actually had an action figure of this character when I was a kid. There were so many great characters from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that to me, it's almost impossible to pick a favorite. If I absolutely had to, it'd probably be Bebop, who I painted a couple times. But do me a favor and let me know in the comments who your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character is. When I decided to pick this foot soldier to sever the W and form the V, I think it just made sense. I know I could have used Shredder, but I kind of want to save Shredder for a different piece in the future. So definitely stay tuned for that one. Now let's talk a little bit about how I'm creating this character. My process is basically just finding a midtone, putting down that midtone, adding some highlights, and then creating some shadows on top, and just working up a lot of layers until the final product comes together. If you're wondering if I changed any caps or any process for the character versus the graffiti portion, I did not. In fact, I'd say 99% of this character was made with the level 1 cap. I may have used the stencil cap towards the end just to do a couple little like accent lines, but everything that you see so far has been done with the level 1 cap. Now, I want to go back to something I said earlier about realizing how you work so that you can make yourself work more efficiently. Personally, I hate everything that involves being done on the ladder, all the higher parts, so I made sure that I got all of that stuff out of the way first, such as the sword, the top of the head, all of those kind of details, so now I can kind of reward myself on the ground. Of course, there will be a couple detail spots I have to go back up on the step stool for, but the bulk of the step stool work is all done. Basically, if there's an area you know is not going to be fun, just get it done. Finally, one of the most fun parts for me, doing that like liquid blood just to show the connection and separation at the same time between what is now the V and what was the W. I think this blood-like liquid also created a nice flow around the piece, and you could see from me highlighting that underside, it almost has kind of like a glow to it, but I definitely wanted to add some sharper highlights on the top section so that it looked more liquid-like and shiny. And I also think the shape of the V with my piece and the rest of the letters, I don't know, it just looks better than with the W. I'm actually really digging this name way more. But of course, let me know what you guys think in the comments. And as we move to the end here, I want to give a huge thank you to my paid Patreon members. If you'd like to see more behind the scenes footage, feel free to follow me on Patreon as well. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. Another way to help support is by going to my website and checking out all the merch I have there. That's kbuart.com. And again, I'll leave that in the description of this video. All right, that wraps up everything for today. It's getting a little chilly, so I'm gonna get out of here and show you guys the final product in one sec. I just wanna say thank you so much for watching. Let me know, of course, what you think of the new Voak piece. I had a blast writing the name. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. Without further ado, here it is, the final product.